Have you ever had that uncomfortable feeling that something in your life just doesn't fit? Like wearing the wrong size shoe. It seems to work, but with each step, you feel something isn't right. If you're nodding right now, stay until the end of this video. What I'm going to share with you today might be exactly what you've been looking for without knowing it. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant psychologists and spiritual thinkers of the 20th century, discovered something extraordinary about the human soul, something most people completely ignore, but which has the power to transform your existence from its deepest roots. Jung said that within each of us exists an unconscious that constantly speaks to us, guides us, and seeks to lead us toward our true essence. However, in the modern world, we've learned to silence that inner voice. We've buried it under layers and layers of others' expectations, draining commitments and relationships that don't nourish our soul. Think about it for a moment. How many decisions have you made in the last month based solely on what you want? Not what your family expects, not what would be more comfortable for your friends, not what seems right according to society, but what truly resonates with your deepest self. For most people, the answer is uncomfortable. We live lives designed by others, trapped in the constant search for external approval. And although we all do it, few recognize the spiritual price we're paying. Jung explained it in a fascinating way. When we ignore our inner voice, when we reject the signals from our unconscious, we create a division within ourselves, a fracture between who we really are and who we pretend to be. And it's in that space between the authentic and the pretended where the soul's discomfort is born. Perhaps you felt it, that inexplicable feeling of emptiness, even when everything in your life seems to be fine on the surface. That fatigue that doesn't disappear with rest. That restlessness that accompanies you, even in moments of apparent calm. You're not alone. You're not crazy. What you feel is your soul desperately asking you to listen. Jung dedicated decades to studying this phenomenon and discovered that the soul's healing process begins with a revolutionary act, choosing yourself, not as a selfish or narcissistic gesture, but as a profound act of love and respect for your true essence. But what does choosing yourself really mean? It's not about abandoning your responsibilities or living without considering others. Jung was clear about this. Choosing yourself means honoring your inner truth, recognizing your authentic needs, and having the courage to live in coherence with them, even when the world seems to push you in another direction. Imagine for a moment that your soul is like a garden. For years, perhaps decades, you've allowed others to plant their seeds in your soil. You've watered plants you didn't choose and pulled out flowers that were trying to bloom naturally, not out of malice, but because you were taught that's how it should be done. The spiritual healing process that Jung proposed begins by recognizing which plants are truly yours and which were imposed, and then, with patience and determination, transforming that garden into a reflection of your true essence. Does it sound simple? It's not. In fact, it's probably one of the most difficult tasks you'll face in your life. Because to make this change, you must first be willing to confront your shadow. The shadow, in Jungian terms, represents all those parts of yourself that you've repressed, denied, or hidden. Your deepest fears, your inconvenient desires, your traits that don't fit with the image you want to project. Jung discovered that these parts don't disappear when we ignore them. They simply sink deeper into our unconscious, from where they continue to influence our decisions and emotions, but now outside our conscious control. Think of people you know who are always judging others for certain behaviors, only to later be caught doing exactly the same thing. That's the shadow in action. What we reject most in others is often a reflection of what we don't want to see in ourselves. The healing of the soul requires having the courage to look at those dark parts, to recognize them without judgment, and finally, to integrate them into your conscious being. Not to act from them destructively, but to understand them, accept them, and transform their energy into something constructive. It's a profoundly liberating process, because when you stop spending energy repressing parts of yourself, that same energy becomes available to create, to love, to live with fullness. Now let me ask you, what aspects of yourself have you been denying? What parts of your personality do you consider unacceptable and try to hide from the world and from yourself? You don't have to answer me, but I do invite you to ask yourself this question in a moment of calm and honesty with yourself. The answer might surprise you. Jung discovered that when we begin to integrate our shadow, something extraordinary happens at a spiritual level. We start to experience what he called synchronicity, those apparently coincidental but deeply meaningful moments that seem to guide us exactly where we need to go. Suddenly, the right people appear in your life. Opportunities that resonate with your true essence present themselves when you least expect them. And situations that once seemed like insurmountable obstacles begin to resolve in ways you couldn't have planned. It's not magic or coincidence. It's the natural result of aligning your outer world with your inner truth. Jung explained it as a manifestation of the profound connection between our psyche and the world around us. When we stop fighting against ourselves, the universe stops seeming like a hostile place. But this path of spiritual healing also involves facing losses. And it's important that you're honest with yourself about this. When you begin to live from your authenticity, some relationships will change or even end. Some doors will close while others open. There will be people who won't understand your transformation, who will feel threatened by your new way of being, or who simply won't resonate with this more authentic version of you. Jung taught us that this is not only normal, but necessary. You cannot expand your consciousness and keep all your old structures intact. Just as a snake cannot grow without shedding its old skin, your soul cannot evolve without letting go of what no longer serves it. The question is, are you willing to accept these temporary losses in exchange for a life of authentic fulfillment? If your answer is yes, then you're ready to take the next step, establishing healthy boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls to keep others out. They're bridges that allow them to enter your life on terms that honor both your essence and theirs. Jung deeply understood that without clear boundaries, the healing of the soul is impossible. Think of it this way. If your soul is a garden, boundaries are the fence that protects it. Without that fence, anyone can enter, trample your flowers, pull up your plants, or even sow seeds that don't belong there. Establishing boundaries means learning to say no without guilt when something doesn't resonate with you. It means recognizing that your time, energy, and attention are sacred resources that you shouldn't waste. And above all, it means understanding that every time you allow someone to cross your boundaries, you're sending your soul the message that its well-being is not a priority. This can be especially difficult for those who have grown up in environments where their needs were constantly ignored or minimized. If you identify with this, I want you to know something important. Learning to protect your energy doesn't make you selfish. It makes you responsible for your own spiritual well-being. And this is where many stop on the path. Because establishing boundaries means facing one of our deepest fears, the fear of rejection. Jung observed that this fear is rooted in our collective unconscious, that part of the psyche that all human beings share. For most of our evolution, being excluded from the group meant an almost certain death sentence. It's not surprising that this fear still has so much power over us. But what Jung also discovered is that when we have the courage to face that fear, to risk rejection by being true to our truth, something transformative happens. Our intuition strengthens. Intuition, according to Jung, is not simply a vague hunch. It's a form of knowledge that arises from the depths of our unconscious, connecting information that our conscious mind could not process on its own. It's an infallible guide, always oriented toward our greatest spiritual growth. The problem is that we've learned to distrust it in favor of a purely rational thinking that, although valuable, only represents a fraction of our capacity to understand the world and ourselves. When you begin to heal your soul, that intuition, that inner wisdom, becomes increasingly clear. Decisions that once seemed impossible are now made with a quiet certainty. And what you truly need for your spiritual evolution begins to manifest in your life. sometimes in the most unexpected ways. A fascinating aspect of Jung's work is his understanding of archetypes, those universal patterns that exist in the collective unconscious and that manifest in our dreams, myths, and behaviors. Jung identified numerous archetypes, but there's one that's particularly relevant to our topic today, the hero archetype. The hero's journey is not simply a narrative structure we find in stories and movies. It's a map of human spiritual transformation. It begins with a call, continues with trials and tribulations, includes mentors and adversaries, and culminates with the hero's return, transformed and bearing an elixir that benefits not only him, but his community. When you decide to heal your soul, you're embarking on your own heroic journey. You're responding to that inner call that invites you to be more than you are now, to face your inner demons, and to return with a wisdom that can only be gained through direct experience. And you know what? That journey has no end. Jung understood that the process of individuation, that path toward the integration of all parts of our being, is a lifelong work. There is no point at which we can say, I am completely healed, because the human soul is infinitely deep, always revealing new layers, new challenges, new opportunities to expand our consciousness. This may seem overwhelming, but it's also profoundly liberating. It means you don't need to solve everything right now. You don't need to have all the answers or be a perfect version of yourself. You just need to take the next step on your path, trusting that each movement toward your authenticity is a movement toward healing. Now, how does this healing manifest in practical terms? What specifically changes in your life when you decide to heal your soul? Jung observed several significant changes in those who seriously committed to this work. First, you experience a profound reconnection with your body. In our Western society, we're conditioned to live from the neck up, ignoring the signals and wisdom of our physical body. But the body doesn't lie. When something isn't aligned with your inner truth, your body will let you know. Have you noticed how certain people or situations cause you immediate tension in your neck, or a knot in your stomach, or a headache that appears out of nowhere? That's not a coincidence. It's your body desperately trying to communicate with you. The healing of the soul involves learning to listen to these messages, to honor them, and to act accordingly. And when you do, many chronic physical problems begin to ease. I'm not saying that all illnesses are psychosomatic, but there is a profound connection between our spiritual state and our physical health that modern medicine is only beginning to understand. Second, your relationships transform completely. Not necessarily because you change partners or friends, although that can happen, but because the quality of your interactions changes. Jung discovered that much of our relational conflict arises from unconscious projections. We project onto others aspects of our own shadow that we refuse to acknowledge. And then we become furious when those people act exactly as we expected, confirming our projections. It's a destructive cycle that can only be broken when you take responsibility for your projections. When you begin to ask, what part of myself am I seeing in this person? What are they showing me about myself? This work isn't easy. In fact, it can be deeply uncomfortable. But when you do it consistently, your relationships become more authentic, deeper, and much less dramatic. You begin to see people as they truly are, not as the screens onto which you project your own fears and insecurities. Third, your relationship with work and purpose changes radically. Jung understood that every human being is born with certain unique gifts and talents that are meant to be expressed in the world. When we suppress that expression, when we choose careers and occupations based solely on security or status, we pay a very high spiritual price. The healing of the soul inevitably leads you to question whether what you do with your time, that finite and precious resource, truly reflects who you are. Not everyone can immediately quit their jobs to follow their passion, of course, but everyone can begin to make small adjustments that allow for greater expression of their true essence. Perhaps it's a hobby you had abandoned, or a course in something that has always intrigued you, or simply dedicating half an hour a day to something that makes your soul sing. These small acts of authenticity have a cumulative effect that, over time, can completely transform your relationship with work and purpose. Fourth, you experience a change in your relationship with time. In our accelerated world, we're constantly projecting ourselves into the future or ruminating about the past. We're rarely truly present in the here and now. Jung observed that this temporal escapism is a way of avoiding the encounter with our deeper being, because it's only in the present where we can truly feel, truly experience, truly live. When you decide to heal your soul, time begins to change for you. Not in physical terms, of course, but in your subjective perception. Moments become richer, more saturated with meaning. The constant anxiety about getting somewhere dissipates, replaced by a tranquil presence that allows you to fully absorb each experience. It's not that you stop planning or learning from the past. You're simply no longer enslaved by a time that doesn't exist, free to live fully in the only moment you truly have, now. Fifth, and perhaps most profound, you experience a reconnection with what Jung called the self, with a capital S. That center of your psyche that transcends the ego and represents your totality, including both conscious and unconscious aspects. This reconnection manifests as a sense of purpose and meaning that doesn't depend on external circumstances. You no longer need everything to go exactly as planned to feel at peace. You no longer need constant validation from others to know your worth. An unshakable inner confidence emerges, not because you believe you'll never face difficulties, but because you know that whatever happens, you have the inner resources to navigate them with grace and learn from them. This is perhaps the most precious gift of Jung's work, the understanding that we are not at the mercy of external forces, that within us exists an infinite resource of wisdom, creativity, and love that once accessed completely transforms our experience of life. Many seek this feeling in substances, codependent relationships, external achievements, or material accumulation. But as Jung discovered, none of these things can truly satisfy the hunger of the soul. Only the journey inward toward our deepest truth can do that. Now, if all this resonates with you, if you feel that call to spiritual healing that Jung so eloquently described, perhaps you're wondering, where do I start? The answer is as simple and as complex as this. Start by listening. Listen to your body, to your dreams, to that inner voice that has been trying to guide you throughout your life. Give yourself spaces of silence where you can hear beyond the constant noise of a world that fears stillness. Jung was a great advocate of practices such as meditation, dream work, and creative expression as pathways to access the unconscious. Find the ones that resonate with you and practice them consistently. Additionally, consider keeping a journal. Jung discovered that the act of writing our thoughts, feelings, and dreams creates a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. It allows you to see patterns that would otherwise remain hidden and provides you with a record of your spiritual evolution. And perhaps most importantly, surround yourself with people who support your journey. Not everyone will understand what you're doing, and that's okay. You don't need universal approval, but you do need at least some fellow travelers who understand the value of this work and encourage you when the process becomes difficult. Remember that the healing of the soul is not a destination you reach one day and announce, "I made it." It's an ongoing commitment to your truth, a willingness to face whatever arises with curiosity instead of fear, with compassion instead of judgment. There will be moments when you'll feel lost, moments when you'll doubt everything you thought you knew, moments when the temptation to return to old patterns will be almost irresistible. In those moments, remember what Jung discovered after decades of work with thousands of patients: crisis precedes transformation. Those moments of greatest darkness are frequently just before the dawn of a new understanding. If you've come this far in this video, it's not by chance. There's something in you that recognizes the truth of what we're exploring, something that knows beyond all doubt that it's possible to live in a fuller, more meaningful way, more aligned with your deepest essence. Jung spent his entire life demonstrating that the journey inward is the most important one we undertake as human beings. That no external achievement, no material possession, no relationship, however wonderful, can substitute for the work of knowing yourself and honoring your truth. When you decide to heal your soul, you begin a journey that will transform not only your own life, but will have a ripple effect on everyone around you. Because, as Jung deeply understood, we don't live in isolation. We are part of a vast fabric of consciousness, and each act of individual healing contributes to the healing of the whole. So I ask you, now that we reach the end of this journey together, are you ready to take that step? Are you willing to face your shadows, to listen to your inner voice, to live with an authenticity that might frighten you, but also calls to you irresistibly? The decision is yours. It always has been. If this message has resonated with you, I invite you to share it with someone you think might benefit from hearing it. Sometimes, all we need to begin our own healing journey is to know that we're not alone in our longing for something deeper. Leave me a comment about which part of Jung's teachings has impacted you the most, or what obstacle you feel is preventing you from beginning your spiritual healing process. I commit to reading every comment and responding to as many as I can. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to receive updates about new videos. We're building a community of spiritual seekers, of brave souls willing to do the inner work that our world so desperately needs. Remember, the greatest act of courage you can perform is not climbing a mountain or jumping from an airplane. It's looking honestly within yourself, embracing everything you find there, and choosing day after day the path of authenticity over that of conformity. As Jung himself said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. It's time to awaken. Your soul has waited long enough. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video.